This is AutoCAD exercise 3. The construction lines have already been drawn, but I will go through that again. The drawing that we are looking at is a lot of circles and radiuses. Luckily, there aren't any missing dimensions or anything that we have to really guess at. We have one line that we will draw. That's just going to be a line tangent to this arc and to this arc right here. And the construction lines, I started where I saw the 0.750 spacing between the center of the upper circle, and then that is dimensioned to the center of the circle in the middle of that object. We've got a total dimension down here of 5.804, and we have a dimension from one circle to the next for this curved slot of 2.312. So if I just take the difference between those two, I get 3.492. So what I did when I drew the construction lines, let's go ahead and right, so I started up at the top with 0.75, then I came down 1.875. I drew a line that was 2.492. You can see that here. And I stopped. I separated this line segment, even though I know the total is 3.492. I wanted to have two endpoints for that 1 unit line, so it would be easier for me to place the circles that I'll use to make this slot on the left side of the object. Then on the right side of the drawing, we're given the dimension from the center of the circle that we wind up placing right here to the center of that curved slot. So I dimensioned that line, and the same length it was drawn for this line that is 40 degrees. That also has a length of 2.312. And looking at the layer properties, just like the last one, I've got my zero layer with that's going to be where I draw my object. I have the dash line for my construction layer. I wound up with a def points layer, and I'll talk about that after I also point out that there's a dimension layer. All right, def points. What happens is if you start putting on a dimension and you don't already have a layer created for your dimensions, AutoCAD is automatically going to create this def points. So the def points layer was because I forgot to switch from my object layer to my dimension layer, and that just came to be. I don't have to worry about it. I'm just not going to use it. But if you do that accidentally, keep in mind that it would be easy for you to wind up splitting your object lines between those two layers, and you really don't want to do that. You want your object all on one layer. Okay. Also, you want that to be the white line, because when it plots, it'll automatically be black, whereas any line that is assigned a color is going to plot that color unless you assign a specific color for that, but that's just more work, so I would discourage you from doing that. All right, the next thing that I want to show you is in the dimension style. Okay, so the dimension style manager, I'm using an annotative dimension because these are a lot of very small dimensions, and I felt like trying to figure out the appropriate text height is going to be a lot of guesswork. And it's a lot easier for me to just come over to the annotative scale and adjust that, and I can see very quickly it's a lot less back and forth. Okay. All right, so we have some differences. The way that this drawing is dimensioned, oh, actually, okay, well, you know what, we're fine just the way we are. I think I was thinking of drawing number 2, where all the radiuses, the arrow is pointing to the object, and then the extension line continues to the center point of that arc. And where you would go in your settings to have them show that way is going to be under the text tab, changing your text alignment to aligned with dimension line, so that got it to show right above. And also having the text placement be above. The default is center. And another change I made is to on the fit tab, under fine tuning, it has draw dimension line between extension lines, and by unchecking that, you can see that the dimension arrow stops at the object line and does not continue to show where the center of that arc is. If I check that box, then I see that. So it makes it easier, especially with drawings that have lots of curves, that I can see that the center of this arc is probably going to share the same center point as this circle, which in the little example here, it doesn't have that dimensioned, but it will make it a lot easier for a person looking at your drawing to know that basically they are concentric, and where the center points are. Okay. I don't think I changed anything else. I did find that in order to get my dimensions to show up, I had to set my annotation scale to 2:1, and it seemed to be just about the right value to use with this size drawing. Okay. All right, so we have all that. If at any point you needed to fix your layer properties or your dimension settings, go back and pause the video so that your settings match the ones that I have here. Okay. So I'm going to just redraw what I already did there, and we can so you can see. Okay, so I've got my construction line selected or the layer selected. I'm going to grab my line. All right, so I'm just selecting a random point in space. I'm going to type in the length of 0.75, hit enter, and I'm just going to continue typing in the values that are on my drawing. Oh, and I'm already placed way too close. Okay, let me just delete that and move farther over. I just realized I wasn't going to have enough room. Sorry about that. Okay, so back to line. Okay, and it is 0.75. Then a vertical line of 1.875. A horizontal line, again, 2.492. Right, and I broke that up into two segments. So my next line is just 1. Okay. All right, I'm going to hit the enter key to restart the line tool, and I'm snapping to the end point of my horizontal line, and I will go off in the other direction with a line that is 2.312. Okay, hit enter twice. All right, hit enter to restart the line command, going to that same intersection. All right, now I have a line that I'm going to draw that is 2.312. I'm going to use the tab key. Okay, so I just happen to be lined up on 40 degrees, but if I wasn't, okay, so let's say I'm over here, or I'm not able to get right on 40 degrees, I could just type in 40 and then hit the enter key, hit the enter key again to complete that command. And now I have the line that it's already the right length, it's already at the right angle, and I can easily go on from there to continue my drawing. Okay. All right, I don't really need to have two of these, so I'm just going to take the first one and delete it. Okay. All right, so with all this put in place, now I can go back and forth between my drawing. I have two circles here, and this is pretty much the whatever the center of my drawing, so to speak. All my construction lines kind of were based off of this point. So I have a circle with a diameter of 1.125 and 1.75. So when I start the circle command, right, so I can type in CI and circle comes right up. I am just going to make sure I don't really want to be dimensioning my circle based on just there we go. Okay, so I don't really want to be putting in the radius. It'd be straighter, easier for me to just go ahead and put in the diameter for each of those. And you notice I'm in that command, and I did forget to change layers, so I'll fix that in a second. But I can still come down here in the command line and read what my choices are and make adjustments there. And I can also go back and forth from that window, and that command is going to stay active. Okay, so 1.125 and 1.75. So 1.125, the enter key. All right, and hit enter again to just restart the circle command. All right, and it is 1.75. Nope, it was not 1.75. It was, oh, I forgot to change it to diameter, didn't I? All right, let's go ahead and just delete that. Okay, so let's go back to circle. Okay, so again, I made that mistake because I didn't come down to the command line and switch it to diameter. That was my fault. All right, so 1.17. Boy, I'm really wanting to mess this dimension up. Okay. All right, and now I'm going to move these because I am going to be working on my object layer, so I'm just going to go ahead and move those over to that layer. All right, so all I did was click on both circles, and then I can come up to my layer property drop down and just click on the zero layer. So it not only made the zero layer current, but it also moved what I had selected to that layer. Okay. All right, deselect all. All right, so zoom out a little bit, go back to the drawing, see what we're going to do next. Okay, so how about at the end point of this 0.75 construction line, I have two circles again. I have, again, dimension by diameter, 1.625 and 0.75. Okay. God, I did it again. I'm still on the wrong layer. Okay. And 0.75. All right, instead of going down to the command line and typing in D or clicking on D, I could just go to my keyboard, hit D, hit enter, and that automatically put me in diameter, and it is 0.75. All right, and once again, I did not change layers. So select these guys. All right, so I brought up the layer properties. I could also, not layer properties, but the properties for those circles. I could also just change it right from there and move it over to my zero layer. Okay, deselect all. Well, why didn't you go? Okay, all right, and that was quick properties. And I can just go ahead and move that to 0. There we go. All right. And close that window. And right click to deselect all. Okay. Now let's really, for real, go ahead and move over to the object layer so I don't make that mistake again and see what I have next. Okay, so going onto the right side of that object, I have a, this arc here has a radius of 0.438, and then there is another curve that is 0.875. All right, and I can go ahead and place those two on because I already have those lines drawn at the right length, right? Remember I drew those construction lines at 2.312. So let's go ahead. Here. Okay, so recent input and go to circle. Okay. So on the end point of that line, it is 0.438, right? And I didn't need to change anything because by default it was going to the radius, so that was okay. I could copy and paste this circle. I could also just hit enter and redraw the same circle. If I hit enter, AutoCAD is automatically going to use the last dimension that I had in there. So I didn't even have to type anything in, I just hit enter. Okay. And then we have this arc, and I don't really have a good way of being certain that it is the same center point. what do we know? We do know that we have a, and I hadn't drawn this one yet, but we have a construction circle here. You guys can see that. And that's actually going to be helpful for me to get the curve that connects those two circles, and then I can trim up everything on the inside. So let's go ahead and draw a construction circle that has a radius of 2.312, and I'm going to trim it and then use the offset tool to get that put in place. Okay. All right, so switch to the construction layer. Okay, circle, and we are right here, and that circle is 2.312. All right, and now if I'm going to just trim this a little bit, because you'll see why in a second. It will help to have that cleaned up some. Okay. All right, we don't need to have it all over the place. Okay, and there. Okay. Cancel. So if we just go to offset, if I select, well, first it wants to know the distance, right? So what is my offset distance? Well, looking at my drawing, from where I drew that circle, I have an arc that is has a radius of 0.438. So that actually turns out to be the offset distance. So if we just go ahead and type in 0.438 and hit enter, and then select that line, and we are going to do multiple offsets. So I just came down and grabbed multiple, right? So I'm going to click once to the outside, and then I'm going to click once to the inside. Okay, and that completes that command, so I can just hit enter again to finish it, and I can then select those two, and let's just move those over to the object layer. Okay. All right, let's get rid of you. Okay, and deselect all. All right, so if I got the trim tool, I could finish up that slot pretty easily. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, I'm going to zoom in a little. Okay, so let's clean this up. Okay. All right, so that slot is done. And going back to the drawing, the outer arc here, we are told has a radius of 0.875. So I think we could go ahead and offset again. So from where that is, we're going to have to make an assumption that the center point of this 0.875 arc has the same one as the smaller arc here. Okay, and our offset distance, because we are working with this outside line here, we are going to have to find out the difference between those two. So let's bring up the calculator. 0.875 minus 0.438, okay, is 0.437. Okay, so we are going to offset these three features. and the offset distance is 0.437. Okay, and we just calculated what that offset distance was. Okay. Oh, it's making me select them again. Okay. Okay. All right, so my offsetting is done. Take a look at the drawing. All right, we have an arc right here, and I've got a circle. Well, yeah. So I've got an arc there of 1.375. So we should be able to, yeah, we should be able to just use circles there. The dimension for that curve is shown up here, 2 times radius r 0.625, okay, or 0.625. So, and again, I am going to make an assumption that this arc has the same center point as these 2 circles. I know there's a lot of assumptions that get made in this, but okay, so 1.375. Okay, make sure I move over to the object layer, circle, okay, and it is 1.375, and I'm gonna type TR to quickly bring up the trim tool, and I'm going to trim up some of the things here that we don't need. Yeah, that too. Okay, so I'm still going to leave it as a half circle, and I can do some fine-tune trimming in a minute. All right, and then I've got this arc here. It's tangent to those 2. So if I do a tan radius circle and use the radius of 0.625, let's see what happens there. Okay, so under the circle, my circle options, all right, tan radius. If I don't bring it up that way, I could have also gone to recent input and gone to circle, and then down in the command line I would have had to first select the tan radius. All right, so it wants to know I'm going to be tangent there, and I have a radius of 0.625. Okay, once I have that in there, we can go back to trimming and clean that up, and that. So it's looking pretty good so far. All right, let's go up to the top here. We've got, again, we're just going to do another tan radius, and that's all that's going to take. Okay, so recent circle, and make sure we switch it to tan radius, because it's always going to go to a center radius circle. Okay, so I've got the tangent symbol showing up right here. Okay, and I don't even have to be specific. I could click anywhere on that circle, and as long as it gave me the tangent symbol, it's fine. All right, and because the last size circle that we drew was 0.625, that's already showing up as a radius, so I can just hit enter. All right, and there we go. So let's get trim up. Okay, yeah, sometimes right clicking is not quicker. All right, so I can clean up that. Whoa. And I can clean that up. Okay, so we're very close to being done. Okay, so we got to work on this slot over here. And remember, we drew a line that was dimensioned at 1. So we can just go ahead and put 2 circles on here. They have a radius of 0.437. And then there is, we'll offset them so that we can get the outer arcs. And those have a radius of 0.75, right? Okay, so we are back in circles. Okay, so this is all about circles here. Okay, so click on the end point of that line, and it has a radius of 0.437. Okay, repeat that command and select the end point again. All right, and that is also going to have the same same radius. But I feel like, there we go. Okay, I came down to the command line and hit enter because I had a dynamic input showing up that I was afraid if I hit enter I would have wound up with the dimension that was showing in that box instead of repeating the dimension that I just had. Not sure why it did that, but okay. Next, I want to draw a line that connects these two circles. I want that line to be tangent. So I want to make sure in my object snaps that I have tangent selected, and I'm going to uncheck center because I don't want it accidentally snapping to the center point. Okay, so I'm on the object layer, get the line tool. Right, as soon as I see that tangent symbol, it is okay to click. Okay, oh, didn't mean to zoom out that much. All right, and again, I'm going to repeat that, tangent, tangent. Okay, let's get trim going and clean that up. Okay, and then we are done trimming. I want to select just, okay, I don't want the construction line. So can I unselect it? No. Okay, basically I just want to get these 4 features here, right, to offset them. And I could also, if, and there will be times where it is helpful where you don't have to keep clicking on all the individual components of a feature, right? Because I've got I've got 2 arcs, I've got 2 lines. I can go to my keyboard and type in J, and join is the first command. And when I do that, I hit enter, and now that is just seen as one object. Okay, and it's showing me in that here 4 objects converted to 1 polyline. So it can make it a little bit easier to work with. Okay, so let's go to offset. All right, so the offset distance is going to be 0.75 minus 0.437, right? Because I had to find the difference to know what to offset. All right, so that's my distance. That is the distance between this is the smaller slot that we just finished, and the distance I have to offset it is 0.313. Okay, so that was super, that was very quick. And go back to the drawing. Okay, so I have a line that is going to be tangent to this arc, and it comes down, and then it's tangent to the arc over here, and then I have an arc here. It's going to be easiest to do a tan radius, right? So that's 1.75. That's going to be the quickest way to do it. So under circle, you're going to choose a tan radius circle, and we want it tangent, let's say here, and there, and the radius is 1.75. Okay, that does not look quite right. Let's I'm going to do Control Z and redo that. Okay, so tan radius. I want it tangent here, tangent here, and it is 1.75. See, there we go. That's so much better. All right, let's double check that it looks like the drawing. Yes, it does. Okay. So the first round with this didn't work because I was on this arc and I needed to click on the line. So now that I did that correctly, we're good. All right, trim that. Okay, and then we have our line that we need to draw. And before I can draw it correctly, because we are drawing a line and tangents are the key here, I need to uncheck the midpoint, the end point, and uncheck the intersection. Okay? All right, so the first point, there we go. So we are tangent to arc, tangent over here. Okay? Get your trim tool, clean that up, and that should do it. Right? The way to double check everything is start putting on your dimensions so that you know you've got it right. All right, so remember the dimensions have already been set up. And again, if I start doing this and I don't switch layers, that's how I wound up with that def points layer to begin with. So I'm going to go to my dimension layer. All right, then go to dimensions. Okay, so now I can start putting dimensions on these circles. And you can see how moving it around is going to change how the dimension shows up. So we can play around with that a little bit because this to me is going to be messy when it shows up like this. Okay, so I've got one here, got okay, I think that did not work right. But so far the ones that we're putting on look okay. All the dimensions are they're all going to go and show you where the center point of that dimension is going to be. All right, so we can put that on there, and we can adjust the placement of the extension lines here so that they're not running through our object. Okay. All right, hopefully as I'm doing this, you're not coming up with a lot of questions or issues in your own drawings. Whoops. Okay. All right, so it's looking pretty good so far. I can change how those dimensions show up. I can also modify the dimension so that dimensions that show up twice, like, you know, this should say 2 times radius 0.625. We can modify that in your annotation, well, with anything, whether it's standard or annotative. In Modify, you have an option for, oh, where's the alternate text? We have alternate units. Okay, it might not show up in this. Let's try. Hold on. Actually, let's click on this specific dimension, right click, and go to Properties. Okay. And in here, this is really quite tiny. All right, so scroll down under text. There you go. You have an option for a text override. Okay, so here I could type in 2x and then just copy the radius that I have here. Okay, and so that automatically changed it, and it'll stay in line. So as I move that dimension around or make other changes, it'll stay there. So you can make use of that as you're dimensioning. And again, if you make your dimension annotative when you want to find out, well, is that the right size? Should it be bigger? Should it be smaller? Okay, so if I just go back to 1:1, that's a little too big. So you can just play around with that to find out. Okay, so 1:2 is making it bigger, so I actually need to go smaller. All right, so that's where you can change that, and depending on what size drawing you have, it can be very useful to have text and dimensions annotative so that you can adjust the scale depending on how big the drawing is. All right, that's it. And obviously, if you run into any issues, let's go over them and find out what what's tripping you up. But good luck.